Welcome to South Asian Environment Dialogue. It's a program being brought on by the Climate TV channel Canada in collaboration with the Plurals India and the No TV Bangla major YouTube channel in Bangladesh. In this program, we discuss the range of issues across South Asia. But today, we are concentrating on one country. We are concentrating on India, simply because the COP26, the Glasgow COP, which happened about 3 weeks back, India made some major declarations on solar. So is India going solar? India going solar with a question mark? How big is this question? We are going to discuss all these issues today. Also, the issue of International Solar Alliance. International Solar Alliance has been formed a few years back, but it has got some momentum during this COP. The United States have joined. And also, we will be discussing the agenda of the final COP declaration in Glasgow Climate Declaration, where coal for the first time has got a mention, but only coal, not the other fossil fuels. How kind of realistic it should be. So all these kind of things we will be going to discuss, and we have a fabulous panel to discuss that. I have with me Mr. Upendra Tripathy. Tripathy is the first Director General of International Solar Alliance, the man who started it all. So very happy to have you, Tripathy ji. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I have with me Dr. S.P. Chowdhury. Dr. Chowdhury is one of the pioneer of solar energy in the country, a renewable energy expert, advisor to the government of India, and many hats. And the man really who pushed solar. I know how strongly he has been pushing and still trying to push. Welcome, Dr. Chowdhury, to the show. You seems to be on mute. Your voice cannot be heard, Dr. Chowdhury.
Thank you.
Great. You need to be heard. Everybody needs to be heard. I have with me Dr. Megha Pushpendra. Megha ji is the lead strategic communicator in International Solar Alliance. Played a very important role, and she was in Glasgow COP, and I had the opportunity to interact. May not be physically, but we interacted a lot during the COP26. Welcome to the show, Megha ji.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Great. And I have with me Soumya Dutta. Soumya Dutta is a prominent face in the civil society, working in the science movement of the country long time, and a very I would say regular participant in the COP. I and Soumya tend to meet very briefly, but we meet often during the COP. So welcome Soumya Dutta to the show.
Thank you and namaskar.
Great. So let's start the ball rolling. We all know that this COP was going to be different, but when the Leaders Summit started in the first 2 days, nobody expected India to come up with the announcement that Prime Minister Modi did in the first day itself. And I was there in the COP and saw how the international media were completely taken aback by the very strong position of India or announcement in the first week. There are issues against India, but at least India, I would say, stole the show in the first week. There's no denying that India completely, in a way, kind of taken it forward. So before I go for the discussion, let me very quickly summarize India's announcements in Glasgow COP. India will have, Prime Minister said, 5 pointers in Glasgow declaration, in Glasgow submission of him in the Leaders Summit. India will have 500 gigawatt of non-fossil electricity generation capacity by 2030. 50% of total energy coming from renewable, again 2030. India's net greenhouse gas will be lowered by 1 gigaton compared to the projected one, again by 2030. And India's emission intensity will be lowered by 45% by the same deadline. And finally, India will attain the net zero status by 2070. We all know how India, even a week back, actually countered the idea of net zero, and how strongly some of the developed countries was pushing India to have the net zero. And India finally came up with a net zero announcement in 2017. Let's start with Upendra ji. Upendra ji, you were the person who started International Solar Alliance. And also, you should not forget, India subsequently also played an important role in One Sun, One Green announcement. Upendra ji, how you see these announcements?
Well, thank you for this beautiful questions. Yes, India is a big country. I mean, the biggest democracy we talk about. India has demography and demand. It's a promising country. It has a very bright future. Now, if you find India's aspirations to be a global leader in climate change, these things all fall into place. India created the Ministry of Renewable Energy in 1983. Not many countries at that point of time had a dedicated ministry for solar energy. And Mr. Chowdhury knows from those days, how the ministry made things happen. And he was in the beginning, when solar was way costly, they were all trying to push solar. And and it is not merely the MNRE that was the brightest idea that came from India. It is the Solar Alliance concept when the Prime Minister announced the very idea of bringing together countries within the tropics. Itself was a very innovative idea, and everybody liked. It's not about general things, everything put together. It is a specific thing. You like, you leave it, or you take it. But it was a clear thing. And the very fact that now it has been opened up to all UN member countries, that itself is a proof. And it has become the observer in the General Assembly also of the UN. Now, if you look at the announcements that Prime Minister made, it is in fitness of that India's aspiration to be a global leader. And establishment of ISA itself was a part of that. And the headquarters in India having soil in its foundation from all UN member countries. It's a symbolic thing, But this is the only office in India which will fly the flags of 194 countries. So all the 5 announcements, the 500 gigawatt, the 50% energy mix, the 1 billion, the 1 billion tons of reduction in the CO2, 45% energy efficiency per dollar in GDP terms, and the most important of all, the bringing in net zero emission by 2070. So if you look at all these announcements, 2070 nobody expected. Actually, everybody thought India was reactive, conservative. They're not going to announce. So it was a very big strategic point, how they communicated that at that point of time. It was a good thing that India was not doing things in the beginning, seemed to be very, going backward, but they came forward, beating all the countries. So all these 5 things fit into India's aspirations to be a global leader in, climate matters. And the other thing, India posed 2 things. One was climate finance, which was actually at the backbone. India played a leadership role in pushing that. Look, all that you are saying, technology is important, finance is important, and you are not discussing those points. And that came because India announced its, net zero emission target 2070. Essentially, it was trying to give a message to the world. Look, we are going to play a very positive role, but at the same time, you should address our concerns.
Okay, Tripathy, I'll come back to you on the actual feasibility of net zero by 2070 and whether the studies have been carried out. But let's take it forward to Dr. Chowdhury. Dr. Chowdhury, you have been seeing this solar from ages, and Tripathy was pointing out that I know in Sundarbans you started it when people never thought about solar. So you are basically pioneered that in a way. So what do you think? India announced, let's concentrate one by one. India announced 500 gigawatt of non-fossil fuel-driven electricity by 2030. Now, India has a target at 2022. And that target is India is pursuing very strongly. But still, there are questions that how far that target will be achieved. And under that light, what's your takeaway? What do you feel this 500 gigawatt is achievable by 2030?
Well, India, as you know, in 2010, India first announced the National Solar Mission. I was also part of that. The announcement. A committee was there, and we prepared the concept note also at that time. 2010, it was announced with only 20,000 megawatt by the year 2022. But subsequently, in 2015, the target was enhanced to 100,000 megawatt by 2022. So, you see, from 20,000 megawatt to 100,000 megawatt, but the year, remains same, 2022. And what we find, in the recent past, India has already achieved 100,000 megawatt, that is 100 gigawatt of renewable power, not solar, of renewable power already India has achieved 100 gigawatt renewable power in the year 2021 itself.
But our target is
March
175, isn't it? By 20, our target is 175
target is
by 2020.
175, but already we have achieved more than 100 gigawatt.
Right.
But in the pipeline, already tender has been finalized. Already, work order has been placed. Like that, if you add on, I find by 2022, December 2022, it will be possible to achieve 175 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2022. So, you see, from 20,000 megawatt, we have enhanced it to 100 gigawatt from 20,000 megawatt. And even 175 gigawatt renewable power, almost we are going to achieve if you consider everything. That means how many tenders have been finalized, how many tenders are in the pipeline. If you consider all these, you will find India is going to achieve 175 gigawatt of renewable power
by 2022.
So that is the lesson, that it is possible. Now, of course, India announced in the UN conference, Prime Minister first declared in New York that India will go for 450 gigawatt of renewable power by the year 2030. And subsequently in COP26, Glasgow, it was further enhanced to 500 gigawatt.
Right.
I do agree 500 gigawatt in next 8 years' time is difficult, but you see, everything depends on the policy. I find, the policy of the state is very important.
Dr. Gonchali, I'll come back to that because there is a very important point you raised. India is such a country. If you can't take center and states together, you're not going to achieve the way you are trying to achieve. So I'll come back to on that thing. But let's quickly take a round.
Right.
You'd like to add something very quickly, Dr. Chowdhury?
No, I'm just mentioning the same thing, that unless we have a uniform policy for the country,
uniform policy,
then it will be, otherwise it will be difficult to achieve 500 gigawatt. But we must have a uniform policy.
I'll come back to Upendra ji on that. Policy is very important. Okay, I'll come back to on that, but let's go to Megha ji. Megha ji, if we kind of widen up the horizon, not kind of remaining within the India, International Solar Alliance was playing a very, very, I would say, pretty active role during the COP. There's a lot of announcements, a lot of things were happening. Now, what are the major, and also very importantly, United States joined ISA in COP. That was the major news, actually. So how do you see, you are in COP, how do you see that ISA's position, you feel being kind of risen after the COP? How you see the whole thing?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Basu. And
you are on mute, perhaps. You can't be heard.
No, I'm not on mute.
Fine. Now you can be heard. Fine.
All right, thank you. So first of all, thank you, Mr. Basu, for inviting me and for having me here. And absolute honor to be sitting in the same panel in which former DG ISA is there, and the other stalwarts and other seniors who are there. So first of all, a great thank you to, and a lot of regards to all who are present here. Well, I believe that our engagements at Glasgow were productive in terms of exchange of information and ideas and building partnerships that can help accelerate the energy transition. As you already know, the ISA has ambitious targets for mobilizing $1 trillion worth of investment in solar energy by the year 2030. So, and we were founded on the premise that solar energy is the most important source of renewable energy for the fight against climate change. COP26 turned out to be a pivotal moment for us in that several governments and leading institutions that were there, they came forward in our support. Trust me, we had no moment during the COP which was free, and we were constantly engaging with so many actors, so many international organizations, so many peer sister organizations. So definitely this will lead to synergy, and we are very hopeful that it would result in a substantive strengthening of the efforts toward the energy transition. Talking specifically about COP, I'm sure everybody has read it in the newspapers. The world's first partnership for interconnected solar grids, which was Green Grid Initiative, One Sun, One World, One Grid, was launched during the World Leaders Summit. We also got into a partnership with newly launched Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, GEAPP, to accelerate an energy transition. So this partnership will champion significant solar capacity generation globally, while supporting grid-based and distributed renewable solutions. We also joined hands with certain able partners, which will work with World Resource Institute and develop the roadmap for solar investment, which will be launched in 2022. We also partnered with certain Nordic institutions. So the elites, the global north is coming into action and is looking at us. And as you know, one of the objectives of the ISA is also to bring down the cost of technology. And Tripathy sir is sitting here. We had a fantastic, successful World Solar Technology Summit in 2020. Moving forward in this COP, in COP26, we launched Solar Compass Journal with Elsevier, and it is now call for papers is right now on their website, and we are asking for various and then of course last but not the least, the United States joined the
that was the kind of cake
absolutely
on top of that. Just to know that as of now, after the COP26, how many countries are part of ISA right now?
So we have total 80 countries who have ratified the framework agreement on the establishment of the ISA, and 21 countries are in the process of doing so. They have signed. So total 101 member countries, you can say. 101
member countries. So almost half of the UNFCCC. So you have almost achieved 50% of UNFCCC. And you mentioned about the $1 trillion kind of something of target or something. So how is the financial scenario of ISA? How strong, how robust is ISA financially?
Well, ISA is financially sound, but yes, we are making collaborations, and we are, of course, the treaty mandates the voluntary contributions by the member countries. So we will be looking forward to the new countries who would be joining ISA to support ISA in more initiatives.
Great. I'll come back to you on this one sun, one green. But before that, to Shomodha. Shomodha, these are hunky-dory. India announced at the beginning of the summit a lot of new targets and being all this. But how you feel when the COP declaration came, final declaration, India and China pushed the phase out to phase down. There are geopolitics associated with it, that's fine. But on one side, we are making huge stride and target on solar, 500 gigawatt by 2030. On the other side, we are still trying to pursue the coal line. How you ratify this too?
See, this is something of a contradiction. Of course, I am also very clear that the proposal of coal phase down was brought by US and EU, and they have not talked about phasing out oil and gas. Because today, in today's scenario, coal and oil contributes roughly equal to the greenhouse gas emissions. Gas is a little lower. So this is a kind of game that they played, but the question of diluting the draft text, which was placed on 12th in the plenary, is really not really a good gesture. In fact, in COP, a lot of poorer countries, a whole lot of civil society, everybody was very critical of India's, China's, this kind of step at the last moment. If they had serious differences, they could have brought in earlier and negotiation could have taken place. At the end point, this kind of a spanner is really not desired.
Alex Sharma came in tears. Alex Sharma almost kind of broke down in tears.
Yes. A lot of poorer countries, they actually, Alex Sharma obviously almost broke down, but a lot of poor country representatives, their negotiators are also really shocked. But the question is, it's India, China, it's not only the coal phase out to phase down. This question of inefficient subsidy, this kind of thing is today's, particularly these two together, which shows that you want to continue giving chances of making more profit to the coal barons, because today there is, and nobody is talking about shutting all coal power plants overnight. It was a question of phase out. And today, by government estimates, a new coal power plant produces power at 330 to 350, rupees 330 to 350 per unit, per kilowatt hour. Whereas a new coal power plant by private auctions, 245 to 270, 265. So what is the even economic logic? Most of the power infrastructure in the country have been built up in using public finance. Because even the privately owned companies.
Sorry to interrupt you, Shomodha. You said in the beginning, that's also a view of many environmentalists in India, that India actually did the right thing, because when, as you said, that the developed countries were not pushing the other fossil fuels, they were targeting only on coal. So that was a problem for the emerging economies like India. Definitely, India could have voiced its opinion earlier. It could have been done in a better way. That's a different part of the game. But don't you think that the scenario could have been different? India could have been pushed also for the phase out of other fossil fuels rather than backing on the phase out.
Exactly. That's what I am pointing out. That India, if they had a problem that the EU and US and the OECD countries, Annex 1 countries, they are not really talking about oil and gas. India should have brought this issue right in the front, that along with coal, oil and gas needs to be phased out. They are also fossil fuels. They also create greenhouse gases. So that would have...
In fact,
one important point that I want to bring out. By this kind of action, India has actually lost, which could have been a leadership position diplomatically amongst the G77 plus China. And among
the very interesting point being made. India actually gained a bit of a leadership position in the past week.
Yes,
with the announcement of Prime Minister Modi. So that, to an extent, being neutralized by the late action or whatever we put that. That's very interesting. But I can remember I interviewed the lady who was leading this anti-fossil fuel movement from Canada, and she said that why the developed countries are not talking about the other fossil fuels. Is it because the UK is trying to get kind of natural gas and other things? So very clearly she also voiced his opinion. But that's very interesting. Let's go to Upendra ji on that. Upendra ji, to ratify this too. On one side, we are so strong and aggressive on solar, India as a country. On the other side, we still would like to rely on coal and been pushing, as Soumya was pointing out, that to maintain with the coal scenario. How you ratify these two kind of thoughts?
Well, see, India is aggressive on solar, not only within India, also outside. And that is whole ISA philosophy is, when the best practice of India are taken to Africa through the good office of Aisha. Now we're talking about freedom solar parks in Africa. We're talking about specific example, they've taken up solar parks. So India is aggressive on solar for the entire world, and that is the climate leadership of India. So far as the second part is concerned, about the contradiction in coal. Now, essentially, overnight, India cannot transit to a renewable energy-based economy, right?
Yes.
We're a huge country, and the per capita consumption of coal in India today, if you find, it is equal to what it was in the USA, I'm told some 150 years back. And so if you look at the past 150 years of the environmental, history of pollution, quite a few developed countries have consumed very cheap coal. They derive the benefits, the benefits, the standards of living all went up. And that is why India cannot promise that it will switch over to a 100% renewable economy or energy-driven economy overnight. And that is why that, it is, we don't know whether India actually talked about phase down and phase out earlier, or whether India was pushing that even other fossil fuels should be implemented, because these are all diplomatic negotiations. We don't know inside what happened.
It was within the four walls of negotiation.
Yeah, so we only look at the flashes, what we came. So India has very, I've been involved with COP. I have seen where, master brains there negotiating on behalf of India. But India is also aware of, behind the creation of Aisha, India is also giving a message about something called the global market. Now, if you look at which energy gets popularized, for example, late 90s or early, in 2000, in 2012 or 14, when the present Prime Minister was Chief Minister of Gujarat, and he wrote that book, Convenient Action as a reply to Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore's book. So the issue was the market, it also decides a lot of things. It is not that, in 2014, when I happened to be the Secretary MNRE, it is and the PM came and Mr. Pillsbury came in. So we changed 20,000 to 100,000, megawatt. It was a necessity at that point of time, because we're looking at alternatives. Earlier, it was very difficult. It was costly. It was, we didn't have the basic industry. China had not brought down the cost of panels.
So many factors are there.
So many factors are there.
So many factors are there. So you thought that, sorry sir to interrupt you, so you thought that India, though being acting strongly on solar, you feel that India actually played safe by keeping the coal option open as well, because so many factors are there.
It is not
so playing both sides, playing a bit of a safe game.
In a practical way. I mean, you can't make a promise you can't keep.
Okay, fine. I'll come back to you on next 70, but very quickly to Dr. Chowdhury. Dr. Chowdhury, you were referring about the role of states, and right now we were discussing that how you ratify on solar and coal this whole gamut of energy mix. So India is, that India is a country where it's so many states having so many priorities. For example, West Bengal right now is thinking about Deucha Pachami coal field, because said to be one of the biggest in the world. So how you see this? How India can achieve this very ambitious target without taking in the states into confidence? I don't see that there are enough discussion within the states. Right today, when we are discussing this, we are having this program from day before yesterday to today, Indian Parliament has been discussing climate change. And I've been kind of following up many of the lectures. Many of the states said that there have been a lot of ambiguity and not of connection. How do you see this, Dr. Chowdhury?
You are right. You see, the priority of different states is different. As you rightly pointed out, West Bengal, the state of, whereas the Karnataka, they have more than 5,000 megawatt solar installation now. Whereas in West Bengal, the installation of solar is only 100 megawatt now, only 100 megawatt. And Karnataka is 5,000.
Very important. Why this difference? Is it in the mindset? Is it in the governance? Is it anything else? Technology?
Mindset. In West Bengal, the top priority has been given by the entire government, the bureaucrats, the politicians, all the people. They are giving priority to the coal sector. And coal lobby is very strong. And they don't consider solar to be any contributor. They don't consider that solar can contribute significantly in the whole energy mix, they don't consider at all. So in state like West Bengal, the scenario is like this. But in state like Karnataka, where 5,000 megawatt solar has been installed and many more are coming up, the policy is totally different. The solar is significantly, contributing in the energy basket in the Karnataka. So in our state,
Dr. Chowdhury, is it due to investment that the big investors are not coming to West Bengal for investing in solar? That's why the solar is not being prioritized?
Not really. I should say the vision, the policy of the government, and the vision is also very important. If we really, that India has committed 500 gigawatt of power, solar power, renewable power in COP26.
Right.
West Bengal, state like West Bengal, there are other states also, they should give top priority to that commitment of India. They should consider that it is India's commitment. But unfortunately, as you have rightly pointed out, we are giving more emphasis on coal now. Coal is the, these two coal mines are now most important for us now.
Dr. Chowdhury, only the government of India has given this responsibility of Deucha Pachami to the government of West Bengal. It's not that, so once you have that, you have to work on that. So this is a very dichotomy out here.
No, that is the conflict. In one forum, you are announcing 500 gigawatt, and in other forum,
yes, right.
Gradually phasing out of coal or phase down the coal. But in other forum, you are encouraging coal. And you are that type of contradiction,
contradiction runs from Delhi to Kolkata.
Yes.
Contradiction runs throughout the country. Very important. Shomada, this is very important. You know that Deucha Pacham is now becoming hotter and hotter with each and every passing day. Dr. Chowdhury was just pointing out. Dr. Chowdhury was just pointing out the kind of the contradiction that one side you are pushing up coal and you are pushing up solar, and other side you are also talking about coal. How do you see this?
See, this is, I'd just like to point out, there are 2 points. One, this is not just a business of one state government. The central government is pushing for opening up. They opened up coal for private business. instead of being for power and for captive utilization. They are opening auctions for 41 coal blocks. So this is going on throughout the country, and Indian government's policy without taking into account the real cost of any source of power. Because see, we don't need coal, we don't need solar, we need the energy, the power. Exactly. That's the service that we need. We should not have any attachment with one particular thing. And if one particular source has a serious problem, coal has a serious problem of contributing greatest to the climate crisis. Coal has the greatest contribution to the air pollution, which kills 1.3 million people in India, premature deaths. So coal at the earliest opportunity should be phased out. And since now coal is more expensive than wind and solar both in good sites, there is no economic logic that it should not be. So I see there is just one point that you have pauperized the states by centralizing the GST. Most states are desperate to get some revenue source from somewhere. And coal is one where the royalty gives some money to the states. So even if the state is willing to go solar, they will not be able to get that kind of royalty. But coal, look at as a ready source of royalty.
So that's a very interesting point. That's a very interesting point.
And that drives a lot of coal development.
But Soumya, very quickly, if you respond to this, let's be a devil's advocate. If we say that coal has to be phased out, we are concentrating on solar and all that. But how can you see the transition? We are talking about just transition. So many people are already involved in the coal sector at various tiers. So if you, as Upendra was telling out, the overnight, you cannot do that. I understand nobody is asking for overnight, but the government of India also needs to have a plan in place for this just transition. Government of India needs to have a plan to take all the states together to form perhaps a core group which can talk about how this transition will happen. So how do you see this? Just transition has to be there, isn't it?
See, the very clear estimate globally seen and also estimates in India shows that the number of employment that you can get in a big mechanized modern coal power plant is roughly less than half of the same capacity of solar. Okay. Like a 4,000 megawatt coal power plant, Tata Mundra or Reliance Sashan, these have around 650 to 700 people employed total, including the contractual ones. Whereas the same capacity will give around 1,500 employment if you go for solar. So once you retrain the workers, identify, retrain workers, they are already in the power sector. So it's not extremely difficult to retrain.
Throughout the world, this can happen. This transition can happen.
This is doable. Right. And the last comment is, globally, if you look at any transition, technological transition that has happened, once the technology matures, it takes 30 to 35 years for the transition, and transition means 80% of that changes over to the new system. So if the technology has matured by 2010 to 15 in that period, 2050 would have been good enough time for a complete transition, given the condition that enough financing is available.
I come back to you, but just a comment to offer here. I can't take the name the source. When India, we were talking with the Indian bureaucrats and the negotiators throughout this COP26. Regularly, we had unofficial kind of addas and discussions and everything. And a very senior bureaucrat told me that according to our estimate, I'll come back to Upendraji after Megha on that our estimate is we really can actually go for net zero by 2047 or 2048, just what you were just referring. That's a kind of internal assessment of Government of India that by 2047-48, and he said that when we were saying that other countries are saying, you are saying 2070. 2070 is 50 years down the line, and nobody will be there to kind of say that what is happening. He said, no, we can leapfrog to 2050 if USA tells 2030 and China agrees to 2040, we'll do at 2050. Obviously. So it's more of a comparative geopolitical game rather than the actual kind of assessment. So that's very interesting. I can't tell the name, but it's very important personality told me that we can actually do for 2050. No problem with that if they agree on 2030 and China agrees on 2040. I'll come to that. But Meghaji, a very important point just being mentioned about the just transition. And now within the just transition, one factor is the gender. So what do you feel? when India is converting or planning to convert from, say, coal regime to solar, we can debate on the speed, we can debate on the terminology, oratory thing, from phase out, phase down, whatever. But clearly there's a trend from shifting from coal to solar. The speed we can all debate, but there's definitely a trend. But in this transition, how the gender comes in, Meghaji?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Basu, for that question. This is a subject which is really, really dear to my heart. Women are underrepresented in the sector anyways, in the energy sector. We only constitute around 32% of it all, and gender inequality is evident at all the levels. So if we look at the various studies that are done by the international organizations or actors or various sovereign nations as well, there are various factors that come into existence. Education of women is the first and the foremost one. So education of women in technology and engineering subjects, like promotion of STEM education for girls at grassroots levels, etc. They should be perhaps looked upon, and improved policies and conducive environment at the workplace comes next. This goes, I think this is sector agnostic. This has to happen all across. It's not only energy or renewable energy or solar sector. It has to happen everywhere. And how to encourage women to become energy entrepreneurs is the second thing that I think, and what kind of support we can provide to women in taking up entrepreneurial activities. That is also something we need to look upon. And the last,
what is the current status, Meghaji? What is the current status? How women are right now? Any studies on that? How women are now kind of working in the sector of energy in India?
As I said, they are underrepresented.
Underrepresented.
Yeah. So be on the decision tables to renewable energy impacting a woman's life at in both the parts, in both the ends of the spectrum, we are underrepresented.
Okay. In fact, I'm just loudly thinking. I saw in the remotest part of West Bengal how the women are doing the water harvesting. They are not really educated women. They are tribal women. They are marginalized women, but being trained by the non-profits to work on the water conservation, water harvesting. Can't a similar kind of model be applied for energy? I am asking you because you lead the strategic communication in International Solar Alliance. One part of the communication is to actually do the horizontal and vertical kind of communication with the community. So is ISC planning to expand this component?
Yes, absolutely. We are engaging in various global discussions to take the best practices wherever they are, and be in India or in other member countries, countries where they will be applied.
I hope it will be going stronger and stronger. Perhaps if we get time, we'll very briefly talk about the kind of future of this one sun thing very quickly. But back to Upendraji. Upendraji, we have been discussing about this 2070 target. Just I was discussing with Shomoda. So 2070 target. From where this target came? Even 5 days before the announcement, our environmental secretary actually said that no net zero target is as such required. So do you feel that enough studies being conducted to fix that target, or it is basically a geopolitical back and forth game? Upendraji.
Part of government now, but I do know Indian policymakers do serious estimation, particularly when the Prime Minister is going to announce something. All the Honorable Prime Minister is known to, announce very far-sighted statements like things.
Right.
So India must have done enough calculation, but geopolitics is a part of it, because that acoustics counts. But coming back to the 2013, 15, 17 and all that, if you look at monsoon protocol, we're all debating, when the ozone hole has to be gapped, closed, and what has to be done and all that. Ultimately, it is market decided, Yes. The prices of substitutes came down, and, things became, and, at one point we calculated that we need some $4 billion to switch over. But today nobody asking, whether we actually required that money, whether that was the money came. So in this 2013, 50 and 70 things, you'll find that market will find its own solutions. Tomorrow, you look at countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, going for solar in a huge way. Or, it's an oil-based country. Of course, they have the advantages. The land is almost free, deserts. They have a fixed exchange rate. Or you look at even within India, at one point wind was far more than solar, and wind is coming down and solar is making headway. So it's all market politics, I can say, right. Market economics that decides. That will apply globally.
That's
today we're talking about global warming emissions. So 55% comes from CO2, where coal is the villain. 45% comes from methane, from NOx, from SOx, from HFCs, from other sources, and we're not talking about those sources of 45% of global warming gases that come up. So market will decide about the reduction of cost. Tomorrow, suppose as John Kerry said, 50% of the technologies are in the lab, and nobody knows what type of technologies are going to come. Right. That will decide at some point. Now, coming back to the question about Indian policy, the power is in the joint list, so both states and center they are responsible. But there are common policies, the tariff policy, and I was very much impressed to read the day before yesterday, Mr. Arkesh saying that one way to get private investment for pumps for the farmers is to give freedom to the investor to generate more solar energy, sell it to the state governments, and give 40% of that profit or benefit to the farmers. Essentially, you are saying that if the $100 is the cost of the pump, $40 should be given a subsidy by the investor, and other 60% should be organized by the farmer, by federal government, and the state government. So if this comes, West Bengal will be the number one to take it, because 40%, farmers requiring, solar pumps will be very popular. And of course, when you look at the coastal states,
basically, you think the market will play a key role in pushing the solar.
Yes.
Right. So market will play a key role. Dr. Chowdhury, market playing a key role. Now, definitely, market has to play a key role. But I have a point out here. The point is, look at the COVID situation around the world. The moment it has been left to market, Africa got, the developed countries got 80% vaccine. So the disparity, market always acts where the profit is. Definitely market comes into the picture. I'm not saying for a second that market is not important. Market has to play a pivotal role, but the politicians and the politics has to play the guideline. If it's completely left over to market, market will just play the role of the profiteering in the urban setup. Maybe the areas like Sundarban will be left out. What do you feel? How the market and politics should play together? Dr. Chowdhury.
No, my point is government has a big role to play to achieve the target. The regulation, market, yes, market is definitely important, but it will take over. But if proper regulation, proper, guidelines are really there by the, which will be formulated by the government. So that type of, regulation and the guidelines are required to promote this low carbon solar technologies and solar energy and other thing. Otherwise, market, as you mentioned, market, the COVID situation, the poor people will be always deprived.
I'm getting it.
Yeah, poor people will be always deprived. So the point is, there should be guideline, there should be proper guideline, so that, the distribution, that as the farmers, the program should be like that. As Mr.
Upendra just mentioned
about the farmers, 40%,
right.
The West Bengal farmers may get 40%. So my point is, unless there is MNRE, Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, so they should formulate proper guideline, proper, regulation, which will really dictate the market. The market is, as such, market has no meaning. Market, it may go in any direction, but that direction
has to be given.
Yes,
right. That direction has to be given.
So that is very important. My point is that.
Okay, and you feel that also the states like West Bengal and others who are not showing that kind of keen interest needs to be taken together with the center and make maybe a common group and kind of see how this whole solar can be pushed.
Yes, I think that is very, very important. Nobody is listening to that. Various states, there are only 5-6 states are dictating solar in the country. Right. Only 5 or 6 states. what about the other states?
Exactly.
Unless we pull them in the loop, we can't achieve any target. We can't achieve the target of, net zero by 2070. Those things we can't achieve. So the important point is to take the,
everybody together on board.
Everybody in the loop, and then decide a policy, and then everybody should implement the programs and projects like that, following that policy, so that the target is there. There is a target. By 2070, we have to go to net zero. This is our country's commitment. So there is a national uniform policy which all the states should follow.
And the target should also percolate down to the state, to the municipalities, even maybe to the villages. So the target needs to be kind of percolated down. Very important, extremely important. Soumya, yes, Upendraji, very quick.
He's an ex-secretary of MNRE and having been close cuts with Mr. Chowdhury when he was at helm of affairs in West Bengal. We have a stick, it's a very good setup in India. The federal government, the MNRE, the Solar Energy Corporation of India, NTPC going for solar in a big way. And there are state renewable energy authorities, including West Bengal, Now, MNRE has taken an initiative to form a platform for all these state level, state renewable energy agencies. It's called AREAs, Association of Renewable Energy Agencies. And the 2010 Solar Mission document, it also stipulates the role of the federal government to the extent of 40%, and provincial governments have been given responsibility for 60% or other way around. But and states have also a policy directive of RPO, the purchase obligations, the renewable energy purchase obligations, and there is an exchange. So very closely at the bureaucratic level, the center and the states work very closely. The constitution itself puts it in a concurrent list, and every year the energy laws, the tariff policies that come, there is widespread. Right. In fact, power sector is the only sector where the honorable minister meets all the power ministers periodically. It is there. But yes, I do understand more and more states should buy more and more renewable energy so that the market, puts up. But that will depend on cost.
Right.
Strategy, I think, in many countries is very critical. Like NTPC going in a big way for solar. What does it do? It is replacing or bundling its traditional energy with solar energy. Earlier, it was so they're unbundling from the earlier package. So things are changing dramatically and drastically the way things are happening. If you look at look at the field, but solar investment in provinces depends on a lot of things. Odisha, for example, yes, they get a lot of money from coal, but they're always afraid of cyclone. They put a park, and every year, every 3 months, a cyclone is coming because of maybe global warming. Then, of course, land is another big issue. So we have to look into all those issues.
Okay, great. Soumya, we are almost coming to the end of our kind of this episode, but I'd like you to comment on this market phenomena. In the Glasgow COP, we saw a major contradiction. On one side, the political leadership was found wanting. They were not delivering. At Greta Thunberg very kind of said that blah 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 conference, nothing happening. People are just talking. On the other side, we found the various industries, business conglomerate, they're coming out with various targets. In the Glasgow, you saw perhaps that every railway station was saying net zero target for the ScotRail. So all those things we saw. So in one side, it seems that politicians were not really acting, market was acting. That many people are saying, okay, that's a good venture, market is taking over. But is it really a good venture, or it's not really a good venture? If market is allowed to take over, Soumya, we all know what is going to happen.
We need to recollect. We are talking about the climate systems of the earth. And just before that, I will also request everyone to recollect what happened in 2007 and 8. That the market, the regulations were diluted, the markets were given free hand, and the entire global economy was brought down to the knees. The same markets were going out to the public finance, and trillions and trillions of dollars, $7 trillion of public funds were given to the same companies which were playing the market. Again, in the climate phenomena, CDM was the first, ETS and CDM was the big far. The calculation shows the European Trading Scheme, ETS, has reduced the emission after all these years by 3.7%. That's insignificant. Then the CDM mechanism, which is international trading of carbon trading, neither the selling countries' emissions have reduced, nor the buying countries' emissions have reduced, nor the global emissions have reduced. Emission must have reduced on the moon or the Mars, but not on the Earth, not on India, not on US, not on Japan, not anywhere, not Europe. So relying on markets is a big mistake. Markets will have a role. Markets have to be regulated. Clear guidelines have to be seen. The last comment, once the Article 6 now that has been finalized, and 6.2, 6.4, both have been finalized.
Right.
If you see, every country has said they will do net zero, not real zero, net zero. That means their emissions, whether in 2050 or for China 60 or for India 70, they still be emitting a lot of greenhouse gases. So even if 20% of the emission exists and that needs to be offset, the main role will be played by the markets. And that means there will be a lot of attack on areas which has already started both in India, in South Asia and in Africa. Lot of poor people, poor communities, their land, their forest fringe areas. Even now there is a talk about blue carbon. That means coastal fish workers are now being, probably will be dispossessed because the blue carbon has to be sequestered. I think markets can operate under a very good regulation and regulatory framework. The moment markets are left on their own, they will create havoc.
So no free rein to the market. No free rein to the market.
20, 60, 70, 50. If you look at the Working Group 1 report, which came out in August this year, it says the Earth's average temperature will cross 1.5 in the decade of 2030s to 2040s. So we cannot play with climate systems, the Earth systems, to my convenience. We have to act based on the climate system, based on the Earth system responses.
The science, what the
that
science
has not
saying.
been done.
What the science is saying. Meghaji, I'll conclude with you, and I'd like to conclude with a bit of a positive note, because we all have to see that we all know that we are struggling, but at the same time, we all need hope to carry on. This One Sun, One Grid program, how realistic it is, and where do we stand right now, and when do you feel that that can be actually on ground?
Wonderful. So I think the progress has been stellar. And in 2018, Prime Minister of India proposed OSOVOG for interconnected solar energy infrastructure at global scale to enable collective global action that we all know. But in a short span of time, a consortium of consultants was onboarded, which was EDF, AETS, TERI. And then in 2021, the Inception workshop happened, which was, conducted by the consortium. It was an interactive workshop where, how the objectives are being aligned, they were spoken about. Then now in COP26, the initiative is now internationalized. So that is a unique thing that has happened. Honorable Prime Ministers, Mr. Modi and Mr. Johnson have formally launched GGI OSOVOG at COP26, leading the call for solar-driven clean energy transition. So, and of course, One Sun Declaration was also adopted in COP26, where the parties resolved to combine efforts and create more interconnected global grid. International Steering Committee is being constituted. Australia, India, UK, France, USA. These are the members of the GGI OSOVOG Steering Committee now. And the declaration was endorsed in the 4th Assembly of ISA by 80 member countries. So isn't that positive? I mean, like, we are definitely moving forward. And what we thought of as an experiment, which might or might not take shape.
But there are many experts who are saying that there are several technical and other challenges. There are voltage differences. There are so many other factors. So I think for another day, we can't discuss at length on today, but I hope those are being taken kind of in account.
So the first, the report of the consultants is going to come in May this year,
next
2022. Yeah, so we'll find out, but definitely the challenges are there. I mean, we are not denying the challenges, but I think we are going steady on this, and a lot of talk is happening.
Great. I think that challenges are there, but the ISA is looking at the challenges. The first report is expected 2022 May. So a lot of things are happening by 22, 23, 24. And as Shomoda was pointing out, that the IPCC AR6 WG1 report very clearly said that the world is going to be warming up more than 1.5 by 2030, 2040 decade. So its time is running out, and time is running out quickly. It's not about the next generation. It's all about this generation, Ralph. Previously, 10 years down the line, we used to say the next generation will be affected. Now we have to say this generation is going to be affected. Because we all see, I was talking to the Bangladesh minister, he said that we all see what's happening by 1.1 degree temperature rise. And think about 1.5 and 2.2 degree. And then the IPCC is saying it can be even 3 to 4 degree. So God saves this world. But I think fabulous discussion. I thank all of you for contributing to I think a very, very meaningful discussion. 2-3 takeaways for me. I hope you would agree. First, definitely a very ambitious target by Government of India. Prime Minister Modi announced at the sideline of Glasgow. But to execute the target, the states and the centers have to work together. And unless that is done, the target will remain a target. It will be difficult to execute it on ground. And the Government of India also has to take a very clear policy position. In one side, it cannot say that we are going so strong on solar. On the other side, it keep on opening up the coal options. So yes, we all agree that coal cannot be completely kind of taken away overnight, but the balance has to be shifted towards solar to a more stronger way than it is happening right now. And Upendraji was saying about the market, very important. Market has to play a key role, but market has to have also a regulation, a structure, a guideline from the government. I think, I sincerely think, and I'm thinking loudly here, that Government of India should very quickly come out with a program, a national solar program or national renewable program. We know that there are several programs, but the programs to be executed. Why the big industries are only funding 5 or 6 states? Why the other states are not funded? Why few of the states that Chowdhury referred about West Bengal not having the mindset? Why it is like that? So I think time is up. When we don't have much time to think about this, we need to keep on working on that. And if India has to achieve, it's not about India's achievement. It's all about world survival. With that, we conclude today. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On with each other.
Six or seven?
But right now,
Close by in Toronto.
places to go in the city.
But I play hockey.
Having a good time with each other.